Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5 of season 2 of the Inspire series. This week we are discussing all things fiction and faction in children's books. We have with us once again Sarah from the UK, Holly from Canada, Josh, Karen, and Michelle from Australia. So welcome, everyone. Faction. Fairly new concept, even though, as we were just discussing between ourselves, it's kind of been around for a while. It's just coming to the fore. Sarah, would you like to continue that conversation we were having?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I love faction, and I didn't really know what to call it for a long time until a fellow author friend of mine told me about this kind of new wave that's coming in. It's amazing. It's kind of information meets imagination. So I was just saying, amongst us guys, that when I think back, actually, it's been around the UK for a while. When I think of the Charlie and Lola books, which happens to be one of my daughter's favourite books, we read them every night. And Lauren Child just did this amazing thing, which was it just seemed really out of the box, where there was this story where it's following Charlie and Lola, this brother and sister, and just everyday activities, and there's always like a problem that they sort of Charlie would help Lola solve. But thrown in there, was Lola's imagination as this 6-year-old girl. So her way of getting out of some situations, or for Charlie to try and explain some situations to her. In her mind, in their imagination, they would go to like the Arctic. But in those pages, there would be facts about the Arctic and about the animals, or they'd go to space and there would actually be facts hidden in there. And it was strange because we didn't really pick up on what this kind of genre was. That's just how we see the Charlie and Lola books. But move forward kind of, sort of 12 years or so, and it's becoming more of a definite area in its own right, where people are blending this information with imagination. It's hugely creative, and it's just a really exciting way, because at the moment, obviously, we've got very much factual books, non-fiction books, fiction books, story books, illustrated books, and this has kind of come in, and I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I love that concept of information combined with imagination. That's a really good way to tackle it. Michelle, what's your take on that?
I first heard the word faction when I was at the Charlotte Huck Children's Literature Festival in Los Angeles in 2009. So before that, I've never heard that word before. And it was a big theme of the conference, where a lot of the authors who were speaking had taken real life people or real life events and then found an aspect of that interests them and then turned it into a fictional story. So it's not historical fiction. I think we need to really draw the line between what I guess we class as faction and what we class as historical fiction. So historical fiction is taking a snapshot in time and putting a character there, and that character would actually, like in The Bushranger's Daughter. So this is historical fiction because everything that happened in this book actually happened. But on the plane on the way home from that conference, I actually wrote Granny Smith as a faction book. So Granny Smith is a real person. She was one of the first Australian entrepreneurs, actually. She came over from England and created the Granny Smith apple. Now, how she created the Granny Smith apple is not accurately portrayed in this book. It is my imagination, but I'm using a factual person and a factual thing that happened, and I'm combining it with imagination and turning it into something that's a little bit fun. But it also has that element where if kids want to go and find out more about who Granny Smith is, and I did actually want to have a little thing in the back that let kids know a little bit about Granny Smith. And
did you put in there where they were from?
Where Granny
Granny Smiths were invented.
It just says that she grew up in England, and then when she moved to Australia, so it doesn't exactly say where in Australia.
Just down the road from me in Donnybrook. That's
Well,
where
there
she
you
was.
go.
Yeah, see?
That's so exciting.
What a small universe. I love it.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, and I really love it, and I think it's something that hasn't fully maybe been embraced in Australia yet, like it has in the UK and it has in the US, but I just think that publishers are still yet to see the beautiful benefit of it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Michelle. Holly, you've worked a lot in schools in Canada. Do you see many of these books? Have you seen many of those books in that environment?
I've seen some. I can't think of a title right at the moment, but I've definitely seen some. I just can't think of a good example right at the moment.
Yeah, but they are there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's good. Karen, what about you working in schools? Sorry, Josh.
That's right.
Yeah, I think children are interested in fact, and it cements knowledge more when it's based on something real than if it's just made up and they're interested in that particular topic. I came across what it was called through actually looking at the different genres of picture books. And that's where it first came up for me a few years ago. And it was factional. And I went, what is that? Never heard of it. And then when I realised what it was, when I read underneath, I went, oh, it's a lot of what I do anyway. I think we all do it anyway, because if you are interested in what's happening in the world around you, you're always seeking ideas as a writer. And usually you will grab onto something that's quite topical and interesting and use that event or animal or whatever. And then, as Sarah said, combine your imagination with it and create it within your own writing, because I know I do it. And I know one really prolific Australian writer who is amazing at it, and that's Jackie French. Some of her stuff's quite historical, isn't it, Michelle? But she also will combine an event that happened, and I think she did it, would you say, like with her book, The Flood? That's factional. And it's based on, is the floods in...
That was, I think, the 2019 floods, I think it was.
Yeah.
Or it could even been the 2012 floods.
I think so, but it was quite, and then the floods came back and it was quite topical. So it was produced because people were interested in that and how you cope with it and what you go through. So they mesh together really, really well. But Jackie French has a very sharp mind and is really good at picking up on things like that and giving them a voice and making it feel real. I used factional in home. As that was inspired by my own family history. And obviously it's an event that happened to my mum when she was a baby. So she didn't have any information to give me and was not in a position to give me information. So I had to research and imagine myself. But it was based on real events. But I think when you put things that have happened to you into your stories, you're using fact, and that can speed up your imagination, if you like. So that's what I think. But I think kids, it's an area that kids are really interested in, and it's an area teachers are really interested in, because a lot of the time that fits in with the school curriculum, and they can take that story many places, not just one.
That's very true. Josh?
Well, I was initially saying I know nothing about this subject whatsoever, But as the conversation is going, I've been triggered. Oh, I've spoken to that author, and their book was inspired by this true event, and they've just twisted it a little bit and sort of embellished it and used their imagination to flesh it out. Like there's a great writer over here called Deb Fitzpatrick, and she was like going through the newspaper years ago, and she saw an article about a guy that was in a glider near Albany, and it crashed, and when it crashed, he actually survived, and he found something that he wouldn't have other come across. I can't remember what it was, but she went, "Oh, what would happen if that was a young boy in the glider? What kind of adventures would he go on?" So a factual situation inspired that story. There's also another guy over here called Mark Greenwood, and he's written a whole series of books on Lassiter's Reef. And they're made for kids, but they're all loosely based around Lassiter's Reef story and stuff like that. So I think using real life events and using fact and then taking your imagination, take it one step further, is a great way of really, for writers and themselves, to actually use real sources as a trigger to then create that content. I think it's a great way of doing it, and also engaging kids with real life stories. Mind you, twisted a little bit, but
Yeah.
But do you think it's our responsibility as writers, to expose kids to this kind of work? I
think so, but I think where the line's got to be drawn somewhere. Where does the kid know where the actual reality ends and the fiction begins?
Yeah.
That's where I'm not too sure what the line would be. Anyone else for that?
Yeah, I think the gem about these factional books, as Michelle was saying, that they're not historical fiction books. You can take the most obscure item and you can create a story around that. It's the point is it brings out that curiosity. So Granny Smith, we've got these Granny Smith apples. Is that child now going to go, oh, that story was brilliant, that was so funny, and actually then go off and look into Granny Smith apples, or anything about space? Charlie and Lily could go up to space, and the moon could be featured as cheese. Well, of course the moon isn't cheese, but in that book where that imagination and creativity has come in, that's how it's going to be portrayed. But that's going to be enough for children to have their curiosity spark. So I think twisting is a really good part of writing these factual books. A friend of mine, for example, she's got a book out at the moment called We Are Family, and she's used different animal families and how animals bring up their young ones and don't, and they can be quite savage, but it's for the child, it's showing them that families are made up from so many different areas. It's not how they probably would have been told years ago, mum, dad, 2.4 kids, that's it. We Are Family shows every type of family, but through animals, how they have their families and their children, their young, out in the wild, and that's hugely interesting. And just to pick up on Michelle's point, I was at a book festival last year, and I can remember this backstage conversation between organisers of, there were some books that they wanted to bring in for children, but were they a bit too factual, so where would they sit? So I think publishers, but I also think kind of literary festivals and people in the industry are starting to want to bring in books for children where there are going to be some facts in, but they just don't want to expose them to that too young just through hardcore factual books. Stories is such a beautiful way and a creative way to bring this into a younger audience, for them to then go off with their own curiosity or imagination and go on a hunt for more of a historical context, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Why do you think, and I guess this question is more aimed at Josh, Karen and Michelle, being in Australia, why do you think these books haven't taken off in Australia? Why do you think we haven't embraced them?
I think we're starting to. I think we're a bit behind the other parts of the world, and I think we're just moving into it now. Also, I think you can't underestimate children if they want to look up a factual book like CSIRO book, they know that's fact. As soon as they look at that, they know when they see a book, and they can see this book, and it's got a different look already just by the cover. You can tell it's factional, and that is fact. So I think maybe they've been there and maybe we haven't recognised them as such too. Would you think that, Michelle?
Yeah, I don't think we value non-fiction enough as a genre for kids anyway. I do think that especially neurodiverse kids who just love factual stuff. So just using my Tommy as an example, some of his favorite books at the moment are Australian Backyard Birdies by Andy Jeppert. And so it goes through all of the animals or the birdies, but it's for kids, and this is just gold. Like I think as fiction authors, I'm a fiction author, I don't write non-fiction. I'm in awe of people who can do this. Like this for me is, I think, where if we need to put more time and energy into creating this sort of content, so we're not losing a whole portion of kids who just for whatever reason don't engage with story. They love fact. Tommy is only 8, and I did read this book before I we've been reading it just a chapter each at night, but Roald Dahl's biography, Going Solo, because Tommy's really into like planes and things at the moment. So his time in the war. Now there are bits of it that I skipped over because some of it was a bit adult, but he was fully engaged in this and engaged enough to want to then go and find out more about the different planes that Roald Dahl actually flew in the war. So I think non-fiction has almost been this second to fiction for a long time. Maybe it doesn't sell as well as fiction does or did because everything's changing at the moment. And we know that in the publishing industry, most decisions are made on how much can we make from a book rather than is it actually going to add value to the kid who's reading it. But I really do think with the world that kids are growing up in now, where information is so accessible and they love being able to have that learning extension. And as parents as well, I think we tend to steer kids towards picture books because they're learning language, or fiction because we can read it to them. But I know that with my boys who have been neurodiverse, I had to spend just as much time in the non-fiction section of the library as the fiction section, and just let them choose that just as if they were choosing their favorite fiction book.
Yeah, let their curiosity guide them.
From a teaching perspective, if you have a class library and you have silent reading and they can go and choose their book to read, I found you always had to have non-fiction as well, because there's always those few kids who will not touch any of the fiction, and they want to have choice too. And so you've got to have what they like. And it's like anything, to get a kid to read, you've got to get them to read what they like. You've just got to find what it is.
I think I must admit, thinking back, what we're talking about now is really triggering some memories, because as a kid, I was always into non-fiction books. Even from 7, 8, 9, I was given books for Christmas and birthdays that was like the Doctor Who technical manual. And like, that was just the best thing ever. I would pore over that and get all the information about Doctor Who and the TARDIS and all that sort of jazz, and books on the weather and all that sort of stuff. But nowadays, I think you were triggering that. The whole idea is that there are a lot of actually non-fiction books that are coming out that are coming under the radar. Like there's Helen Milroy over here in WA, and I've got it behind me, but I can't find it. A book called Backyard Birds and another book called Backyard Bugs, which encourages little kids to go out into their backyard, to go exploring, looking at the birds, find the bugs, find the snails and all that sort of stuff, and really engage with the environment around them, which I think is a great idea. And there's a whole series for 8 to 13-year-olds that's available Australia-wide called the STEM Star series. And it's where they get well-known authors to write biographies about scientists and stuff like. So I think there's one by Fiona Wood. There's one about Fiona Wood, the burns surgeon and stuff like that. So there's those books there that are coming out that are all nonfiction, that are all sort of sciencey, sort of kind of based, that are really engaging with these kids. And I think that it fills that really important gap. And I think, as Michelle was saying, a lot of neurodiverse kids really gravitate towards that, especially the Guinness Book of Records, one of the most popular books in the world. And so many kids love that. They really just like, I have 3 copies of the same book.
Oh my God, Tom's reading this book at the moment. It's called the Darwin Awards. And it's about, Josh, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, all the fails, all
the stupid ways to die.
Yeah, yep,
and he loves it. He thinks it's hilarious. But he's independently reading, and do I care? No. He
exactly.
He is picking up that book instead of the iPad, and he is reading. So
yeah, that's a good thing.
Darwin away.
And also, we have publishing houses now that are growing and doing non-fiction, like CSIRO in Australia. And one of the biggest branches that's expanding is picture books.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've picked up some just to show, because I love their books. So, there's wasps in the way, the weedy sea dragon, the great southern reef, and I love One Potteroo. I love that. But I love animals and nature and stuff.
Yeah. Are they a combination though? Like, do they come under the faction, or are they more?
When you look, I think the illustrations have to be quite accurate. What do you know about wasps?
You couldn't have me illustrating those type of books. People go, what the hell's that?
No, we should.
Yeah. I want you to illustrate the Darwin Awards. That would be funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Market is growing for non-fiction.
Yeah. And are you talking specifically non-fiction, or are you talking faction?
Both, actually. Both. Tanya McCartney does it very well.
She does.
Yeah.
She's awesome at it. And if you look at the work she puts into her illustrations, as well as her words, the detail and the research that she does. She did one on May Gibbs. She's done Australia Illustrated. I think she's done the World Illustrated. But she does factional really well as fact. She's amazing, really, really amazing.
Yeah.
So they are growing, I think, silently.
Silently.
Silently, yeah. They're getting traction, but
Yeah. And that's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they will keep growing over time. Holly, I can't remember, do you still work in schools? I know you've worked in schools for a long time.
Yeah, I don't right now.
Yeah. I couldn't remember. I was just, going to ask about, those kind of books that Karen was just showing. I just wondered if there was anything similar like that in your schools over there.
I'm just drawing a blank as to the titles, but yeah, I do, over the years and the different ages, definitely both types. But I think even until getting more involved with writing, I didn't notice the factional part of it so much. And I think it was just like I originally thought that was just how people wrote, and I know that when you find that thing that the kids love. Like that's what's so memorable about all the different ages, you know. And sometimes it's so late, like it can be so late in the life of the school life, and yet when that main interest comes, it's just so amazing to see that, you know, when the lights come on. Like, wow. So yeah, I just think it is such an opportunity, you know. There's so much, and with everything, I find like now, as the years are going on, and so much more is available, like it really, the kids are just that, like from such a young age, they're getting that information. And I just think it's exciting what's available for them. I always remember this one time. It wasn't when I was working in the school. It was actually in an office. And I remember this 5-year-old. Now, this is a long time ago, and technology was pretty new as compared to now. I remember this 5-year-old calling her mom, one of my coworkers, to see how can she print. She wants to print something off the computer and take it to school. And I just remember, you know, she said, like, I've looked all of this up. And I just thought, so resourceful for such a young kid. Of course, kind of like it's all kind of old now, right?
You agree with everything that's available, just as much as it gives kids that back matter, and they can find what they want and they can get really excited. I find as a writer, it's the same. If I find an idea and that information is there, I'm hooked. That's it. I'm in there. I've got to find out. I'm digging, I'm scratching around. And that is giving me that back matter in my head and that information to write, rather than trying to pull it out of the air from nowhere.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting is how, as you know, Michelle was saying with her Granny, you know, your Granny Smith book, it's not necessarily historically factual, you know, but it's there and it's little nuggets. And I think that's the key thing to remember, is to have as much fun as you can with it. Be really creative, really twist it, because how can those little facts drive your story along? How can they move your characters along? What fun can they have with it? Because we all know, obviously, the more children see themselves in these characters, they feel almost like they're learning together. It's this peer mentoring, this peer learning, and that they're learning with the characters about some of these things. But there are going to be some funny moments, and then there are going to be some things in there which aren't factual, but they still drive that story along. So you can have a lot of fun. Don't go down that rabbit hole thinking you're doing historical fiction. You can definitely just get really, really creative. You can put some, you know, your ideas in there as well, and just have a lot of fun. I think it's quite a big scope that you can go with that, because the whole point is it's just catching all the, you know, all the children, everybody, all the readers, and just igniting their curiosity.
And yeah, I mean, that's what story's all about, isn't it? Igniting that curiosity in every child that picks up a book. And it doesn't matter what kind of book it is. It's, igniting that curiosity with story. So thank you, everyone, for your contributions again tonight. We must leave it there. So thank you again, and another informal conversation. I always love these conversations. I learn so much from them, about them, and about you guys as well. So thank you, and we'll chat again next week.
Thanks then. Bye.
Mm-hmm.